How many of you, when playing a game of chess, just take pieces because you don't really know what else to do? You just make captures incessantly, don't really think about it. I don't really enjoy chess, so I want the game to be over as quick as possible. That's the feel it gives, anyway. I'm going to help you understand how to differentiate between a good capture and a bad one, when you should, when you shouldn't. First example is here. We're going to be progressing through my own experiences in the rating ladder. These are all my own games that I've played. My opponent here in the 600 section plays knight a6. Now you'll see the eval bar twinge a bit there. The eval bar is going to be a little bit of a help for you. But the first question is simple. To take or not to take? You see, 600 me, I didn't. For those of you that said you should, absolutely you should. The only way to take back is with the b pawn. Now just look how stupid these pawns are. Pawns like to be side by side, interwoven so that they can march forward, they can roll, steamroll down the board. These pawns, goofy looking ass, it won't take much to chip away at them. And these pieces are going to be forever stuck trying to defend them. And that is how you start to build an advantage. Okay, the eval bar only says it's plus 0.2. But prior to that, already I'd played a goofy opening and black had already got a sizable advantage. One wrong step and you only have to capture it. But we don't see any of that. We go into all this instead. And again, another example here. Black absolutely should take the bishop here. Because one, you get to trade bishop for knight, which in a position like this is ideal. Obviously that's a bit more complex. And it just leaves white's knight goofy on the edge of the board. So, next one, the 900-ish level. How many of you have seen this position before? I don't know whether to say I sincerely hope you have or haven't, but this is a London system. A very common idea in the London that I'm sure a lot of you will know is that when faced with this dark square bishop trade here in the center of the board, you can just snap off the bishop, happy days, but in doing so, you help black develop, you help black get their queen onto a nice juicy square where it can't really be moved straight away. So instead, you go bishop g3 instead. Now again, the idea is differentiating between a good and a bad capture and trying to trade on your terms. As mentioned, we could just snap here, and then black gets everything they want. But here, maintain the tension instead. Be brave. It takes a lot of courage to just keep tension in a game, because you may well go and forget about it later. But now, if I were to take, this doubling of the pawns is not as detrimental, because we get an orbital strike on this h7 pawn here. That is the idea. You are this rating. Believe me, games are won and lost just purely on this trade. You can crash through, take everything, because they'll move the knight. They'll move the knight somewhere stupid. And you can just smash straight forward. It only seems like one pawn, but it starts to become an avalanche. Next game we have here is an interesting one. 1300 level now. We have a pawn cube. Nice blob of pawns in the center. And this one is often a mystifying one for players of any skill, really. You have so much to try and analyze here. All sorts of captures to look at, whoever's move it is. It becomes a minefield. So the easiest option, more often than not, is to just ignore it and hope for the best. For example here, knight a5 is the best move. And you threaten to take here on c4 with the knight, and a tempo on the queen. Then you put good pressure on the b pawn. That's all well and good. Let's try and figure out why what I did is inaccurate. That is not the correct capture. Simple idea of this move is blow the center up, maintain an even pawn structure. Now a 4v4 on one side, a 2v2 on the other. Everyone's happy. Position's nice and equal. Fantastic. Let's look at the pieces. The pieces make the position. This bishop right here is tonk. Absolute weapon of a piece. You take here, just look at the scope that this bishop can have once this knight moves out the way. That's one part of the puzzle. What actually happens in the game, my opponent plays very well here. DC5. Now, the queens stare at each other. We could try and maintain that tension again. Try and maybe build up around it, bring rooks on. But no, I dive straight in, take the queen, because I don't know what I'm doing, and I don't know any other alternative to do. Now, after the knight takes, it brings us back to our original predicament. This bishop, wide open sniper. If you get the opportunity to take on c6, disaster. Black's pawns are stupid. Got a little fucking, like, mouldy mayo sandwich thing going on here. I don't even know. Those pawns are just wedging each other. That would be terrible for black. This pawn would be a constant liability. So we don't want to allow that. More to the point, who actually is going to win that pawn? You can't bring the knight here. You bring the knight back here, you're only going to see some sort of expansion, possibly. Let's go knight d7. Knight c4. Knight c5. But then you're still faced with this issue and you're still left with the weakness. Take, take. White's pawns are together. Yours are not. White's knights are on good active squares. Your minor pieces are not. Okay, this knight isn't bad. But this bishop is stuck in the pits of hell. All of that stems from one little trade. One little trade, and that is how everything changes. I'm not saying it's winning or losing, but it's miserable. It's not a fun time trying to play out that position. Now, a bit more advanced, 1500-ish level now. We have Spanish at the gates. White has just played d4. You'll notice that black, if we dial this back, has had the opportunity to take on d4 for a while. You can, either or in the Spanish is fine. I should have played knight g5 there. Okay, that's besides the point. Again, you can. Black chooses not to. Either or is fine. But oftentimes in the Spanish, you want to crash through with d5. Maybe drop the bishop back if the knight comes out. It becomes difficult because you put the bishop here and then it gets glued away. It doesn't have much use. I go de5, which is a perfectly fine move. That's a good move. Black takes with the knight. Presented with a choice here, you do only have two options, take with the pawn or the knight. One is considerably better than the other. You take with the pawn. Again, this bishop is kind of entombed by its own little minion. But life goes on. You can h5, bring the bishop out this way. This knight's on a pretty cushy square. You're just controlling good active squares. But by doing this, you may think only one move ahead. Think, okay, all these pawns stay together. There'll be good scope for expansions. Try and suppress this bishop. All good ideas. But just look at what happens if you take. Got a take back. And just like that, castling rights have gone. Your king is stuck in the middle of the board. You might see knight a3 and long castles. You've created a pin for yourself, so you can't take this pawn here. And already you're just in misery, and we're only 11 moves into what is ordinarily a very boring opening. I mean, I like it, but maybe I'm a boring person. All of that could have been avoided just by understanding this one capture. Take with the pawn, not the knight. Now the final one is quite an advanced topic, but I figured I'd throw it in anyway. Why not? We have an endgame here where I am better / winning. I'll give you 5 seconds to just figure out what the winning move is. Simple, it's bishop h2. Then after king h1, you may have noticed this threat here, so we have to guard it with rook d8. We're up 2 pawns. This is pretty comfortable. I am a bit of a numbnuts. I don't see that. Instead, I just get scared of this knight d5 idea, and I look to try and prevent it. So, the question is, do we capture this pawn, or is it good for us to use as a bit of a cover and try and guard this square a different way? We could go queen c6, although the structure gets damaged. At least that pawn on c6 will limit the knight's ability to move in. The decision I take is I capture the pawn. This is wrong, because this pawn is just like a little tinfoil helmet kind of thing that you just sit and hide underneath, and it protects you from everything. The only thing you really have to worry about is queen d7 ideas, but you'll put the rook on d8, and that will give your queen its own autonomy to move anywhere across the board. You're fine. No infiltrations from the rook. The knight is going to have a bit of a bugger of a time trying to get in. You're just safe and cushy. But instead, I capture and get greedy, trying to go up 2 pawns. And that's just a whirlwind of things that can be done, most notably queen c4. Because let's say we go king f5, which is the only move that isn't really losing. You just open yourself up for all kinds of stuff. Pawns will march forward. Your king is not safe. You're out in the middle of the board. You can't focus on the fact that you're 2 pawns up and creating your own initiative trying to march forward. Because white is just going to barrel and pepper you down. Although it's only plus 0.7, again, this is miserable. You know, queen d3, stopping black from getting to the sneaky sort of escape squares. King e6. You can just barrage your way through. So next time you play a game yourself, and you are presented with the opportunity to capture, just think for a brief second, just 1 second, don't waste too much time. Who benefits from this? Who gets what they want?